Welcome to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, founder of Expansive CEO and X Squared Wealth Planning. Buckle in as we explore how to create true prosperity and build a business and a life that expands beyond yourself and makes a dent in the universe. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I am your host, Hannah Chapman, and I say this a lot, but truly for reals this time. I am so excited to have my guest on today. Her name is Lauren Ammon, LA, or, however if you want to call her. She's the founder of Performance Reimagined, and we have done some really, really cool stuff together. And I am so grateful that you're here to talk about what's new and happening in your life and in your business now, Lauren, and to get to talk more about this thing that we're both super passionate about in a little bit different ways. Not really, but the way that we've gone about it is different, right? And I think that speaks to a lot about our different designs. So with that teaser in mind, we're going to go into a lot around human design today, and the journey that especially Lauren has been on, that we've both been on, but especially Lauren, into the new ways that business is really showing up and things that are happening for you right now. So Lauren, thank you for being here. I'm so excited. I love you so much. And tell everyone else more about your background and why this is such a cool, interesting, exciting, perfect new space for you.
Yes. So one, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And what I love so much about it is, one, the way that our designs come together is that we are very different kind of generators, but our profiles are very different as well. So that lies a lot of differences, but that's the magic between us. And we have a lot of harmony and resonance in that respect. And those are, human design technicalities that we'll get into. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. And as a part of my profile, it is all about timing. So this seems to be, there was a yes for both of us at exactly the right time. So anyway, about my background is I always like to, me, chunks, bullet points, those sorts of things. So I grew up as an athlete. That is a huge, huge, huge part of my life, part of my backstory, part of my personal brand. Anybody who follows me out there knows that I'm somehow always talking about sports one way or the other. And it did create it. When I look back on that experience now, I used to always say it's what helped define me. But now that I look back on it, it's more about it's what allowed me to come to the surface in a way. And as I look back, there is a lot of my design kind of woven into the space of athletics. So it's kind of this like aha moment. After college, I swam I was a swimmer. So I swam from the time I was 5 until I graduated from college. So nearly 2 decades. I went into corporate America in the human resources space. That's where I spent all of my career, where I really gravitated towards. For anybody who knows the industry, it's this wide breadth of do anything and everything that anybody kind of asks you. But what I really gravitated towards was this idea of really supporting people and understanding here's where they are, here's where they want to go, what do we need to do in the middle to help them get there. That's what really lit my soul. But for anybody who's been in the industry knows that you can't necessarily always really focus on that. And it was more firefighting and ironically responding to things, but it drained my soul and I had to get out. And but in that journey, what kind of sparked my interest was the idea of becoming a certified professional coach. At the time of that part in my career, it was kind of like, hey, maybe I'll get the title. And a lot of times in the very early stages of, what coaching is, that word was kind of like thrown around, especially in the HR space. And who I am, which is funny, as we get into my design, if I was going to have a title, I wanted a foundation behind it. So I went and got my professional coaching certification from IPEC, for anybody who's familiar with that. And in January of 2020, I started my own business, really focused on leadership development, career coaching, those sorts of things. And even through the pandemic, it was kind of like, this is fun, great. Don't get me wrong. It's very fulfilling work for those who find it fulfilling. It was kind of like, ugh, I feel like I'm still in the same space. So there was a transition into working with athletes and going into the athletic space, you know, going back to my roots. That was great and I loved it. But again, there was still that like, ugh, and Hannah knows this. It was always this like up and down, this back and forth, this, I don't know if I want to, I don't know if I can, da 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 da. And then lo and behold, our beautiful host here, Hannah Chapman, introduced me into human design. And that is where my life really, how do I say this? My previous life stopped and my current life started, I guess, in a way. And so that's really what I'm focusing on now, is supporting not only business owners and organizational leaders, but certified or professional coaches integrate human design into their coaching practices.
Mm. So that whole journey that you just described, so we've been friends and working together since, gosh, what was that?
21, I think.
December, November. No, we probably met in October, November of 21,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
2021. Um, and to see how you have shifted, like exactly what you were saying, like that always feeling like not quite right. And part of my work, right, as a financial advisor, and I really expanded my
Mhm.
suite of offerings and what I do as well over that time. But I always was focused, even from the very beginning, on like, who are you? What do you want to do? What matters to you? Let's focus on that.
Mhm.
And it was so interesting to like support you through that, but also see how you were just not happy in any, like, you were like, "Oh, this isn't it. This isn't it. This isn't it,"
Mhm.
until human design like clicked.
Yeah.
And the other piece that I remember, which is really interesting that maybe we can get into, is that you wanted to keep it at bay for a little bit. You're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I wanna dive into this so badly. I wanna dive in. I wanna dive in. I gotta wait. I gotta wait. I gotta wait." And then once you let yourself actually, like, dive in as much as you wanted, things shifted pretty rapidly, it feels like. Tell us what that was like for you, that sense of, um why it hit you so deeply, I would say, like, when we first started talking about it. What was it? What was that sense for you?
Yeah. I, oh gosh, it all kind of jumbles together, but the why it resonated so deeply was it was finally answers or validation or permission or allowance to live and be the way that I've always kind of known that I am, but felt so terrified to be the black sheep or the odd man out or, you know, the crazy woo lady who's like, what are you talking about? Because like I tend to be a very logical person, and that's the funny thing about human design. It is very logical. I mean, it's a very like logical system and you know, details to follow, which again is part of my design. But anyway, we'll get into that. But it was this like aha moment of holy crap. Like, you know, for me, for instance, like one of the greatest things was as a generator, like waiting to respond and not initiating. Or yeah, and that's the thing about human design. When you hear the things of like not initiating, right? You can take it as Bible, like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? Like, am I never supposed to like do anything or you know, act? And it's like, no, like once you get deeper into it, as a generator, like we can literally respond to anything. It could be a book on the table, like, oh, that book looks interesting. I want to read it right now. And all of a sudden you're like, why the hell am I reading this book? I had no idea why I wanted to do it. And you're like, there's no reason for it. You just responded to reading the book. And it was that kind of liberation and this idea of, oh my gosh, like my mind is running the show so much. And it was almost like this liberation of like, I know I have a really powerful mind, but I don't always have to listen to it. Like for me, that was kind of the whole like aha moment of, oh, wait a minute. If I respond to something, right? And that's what human design was. I responded to it. I didn't go seeking it out. You brought it to me, and I was like, well, this is kind of interesting. This is really interesting. But it was the waiting. I was like, oh, I don't know if this is the right time. And I don't know what made me pause. I don't know. Like, I don't necessarily remember having a conscious thought of like, this isn't the right time. It wasn't like my body wasn't like ready to go yet. And that's the thing. And in terms of human design, I think it was that other like aha moment of whoa, whoa, whoa. my body knows way more than my mind could ever know. And to really step into what my body is telling me versus really kind of anything else.
Mhm. So let's define a couple of things
Yes.
quickly. So for people who um, are familiar with human design, they'll understand what you say when you say the word generator and some of those things. But let's like just a really, really quick, doesn't we're not here to teach everyone about human design today,
Right.
but so for context, Lauren, you're a 1-3 profile generator, pure generator,
Mm-hmm.
sacral
Mm-hmm.
authority. I am a 6-2 profile, pure manifesting generator, so also sacral authority. Um, and we both also have defined spleen areas as well, which tends to carry a lot of the intuition,
Mm-hmm.
kind of that intuitive hit that you can get whether something's right for you or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been when you talk about learning to respond to things, that's for me as well. Like that's a huge piece for me. And it was actually a piece of healing for me to learn that I've always known I've had like a strong gut response to things or a strong intuitive sense of like if this is for me or not for me. And the world outside, just to what you were saying, like wants us to do the, pros and cons list. And have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you and what I have noticed over time in experimenting with this myself and starting to, like getting to know people who have different authorities, that tends to be more an emotional authority
Mm-hmm.
that wants to do they can call it a pros and cons list, but what they're trying to manufacture is that the wave of, is this good? Is this bad? And you need to come back to neutral before you make a decision. A sacral being or a splenic being authority, that is not how we operate.
Mm-hmm.
And the pros and cons list can actually like be the thing that confuses the body response that we have. So when I have created spaciousness in my life enough so that I can really feel my reactions, that has been the thing that has been absolutely key for me. And again, that healing piece of understanding that I'm not broken. Like there's nothing wrong with the way that, I sense things. And if I move with my intuition and with my gut response, that is correct for me. And if someone else has emotional authority, which about 50% of the population does,
Mm-hmm.
they're not wrong for needing the pros and cons list, right? None of us are wrong. We are different.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me, I think is one of the most important aspects for people to grasp. And one of the first things that I talk about a lot too is like, let's really dive into just this aspect of your
Mm-hmm.
authority because it can have so much impact on your life.
Yes. And that was also a big aha moment too, was being able to look at the designs of other people around me, whether they're very close to me, like my family or my friends, or just ancillary people maybe that I've worked with before, or whatever the case may be, and having those light bulb moments of, oh, either that's why I felt the way I did. Well, I felt so energized and ready to go around this person, or this is why I feel drained, or potentially the other way around too, is, I've been told my entire life that I'm intimidating, that I have a lot of energy, and that, it's hard to keep up with me, and I'm wildly impatient. Yes, I am wildly impatient. Part of that also has to do, again, from a human design technicality standpoint, I have a very lit up spleen. People always joke when I say that is that every single gate in my spleen is lit up. Nearly every single gate in my root center, which for anybody who's not familiar, is the body pressure we all innately feel. And I have nearly that whole center lit up as well. So I do have a lot of energy, and it's not something that I'm trying to thrust upon anybody else, but it just happens because it's there, it's present, it's ready to go. And it's knowing those sorts of things. And it allows to, when you figure out your human design, and it allows you to release yourself from others if they're different from you. And one of the greatest aha moments came when it comes to emotional authority. So for anybody out there, as Hannah was saying, for anybody who has emotional authority, you ride your emotions in a very specific wave, and that wave differs for every single person. And even if you have the same wave of somebody else, it's going to be different based on your whole design. And you and I are not emotionally defined. And the challenge, the beauty of that is we can experience all kinds of emotions in very different ways. It's not set for us. So the flip side of that is it can be very chaotic because we don't feel emotions consistently, and we can almost amplify what others are feeling, and then that amplifies for them and we amplify it again. It becomes like a whole mess and a whole chaotic, to do. But being able to learn that too is because it is undefined for me. I also see where in the human design world, what we call your not self, think of it too as like your nurture, right? You can think of human design as your nature versus your nurture. And the quote unquote not self is the part of you that's conditioned by what goes on around you. And because you and I don't have emotional definition, we can be conditioned by those who have an emotional authority, and we can get caught in the trap of making emotional decisions, or creating that pros and cons list because that's what we believe we're supposed to do, when really it's we've got to clear out enough energy in our body to be able to listen to our gut and to tell us, is this safe for you right now? And sometimes we can't do that if we don't know how other people are affecting us. And again, that was another light bulb moment. It helps take away blame and judgment based on what's going on around you and for yourself.
Oh, yeah. I feel like both, right? Like, so the blame and judgment for others and the blame and judgment for yourself. Like when those flashlights are turning either way, right?
Mhm,
It's from an experience of I'm doing things the wrong way,
mhm,
right? Or so, something it's out of alignment with who you are in some way, shape, or form. And when we step back, so the personal example I have is that I'm sacral authority. My husband is emotional authority. Didn't know that for we've been together for 20. We got together in 2002,
Good,
2001, 2001,
2000,
so 23.
yeah.
Got it. There we go. 23 years. I did not know this for 20 years,
Mhm,
right? This was new information for me. And again, like I was saying before, that pros and cons list isn't wrong.
mhm,
So he's not doing anything wrong, right? And but when I felt injured by that, like, why don't you trust me? Why don't you trust my, this is what I'm saying I need or don't need, and then you're trying to convince me otherwise, is what it
mhm.
felt like. But then on the flip side, he was like, "Why are you so confident that this is going to be fine?" I'm like, "I don't know, I just am."
I don't know. Can't tell
Right?
you.
Right? And so for me, there was I would feel sad, or I would feel resentment, or I would, those feelings would come up for me, and I didn't realize, like, why can't you just make decisions like me? Or he's saying, why can't you just make decisions like I do? Like, oh, no, we never will.
Mhm,
We never will. And what we have to do is like whoever's having like the stronger reaction to something, right? Like if I know like without a doubt something is like pulling me like a tractor beam towards it, like I need to be able to say, this is really important to me.
mhm,
I can feel it. This is a yes for me. Or if something is like an absolute no, right? I need to be able to say that. And for him, he needs to be able to go through his process.
mhm,
And that's how we can, if it's a joint decision that we have to make together, we can honor that for each other
mhm.
in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
And when I'm thinking about that was my first introduction too. It was like learning about it for myself, then learning about Adam's design, then my kids, and like, oh my gosh, like I can totally see how all of this makes complete sense for each of them. And then I started introducing it to clients when it felt right.
Mhm,
And you were one of the first. Yeah, there were probably like 3 people at first who I was like, it just felt right to share with. And from there, it was it became clear to me how important it was,
Mhm.
if nothing else, for me to at least know what type of authority my clients are, and how, some of the main points of their design, so that whether you're into it or not, like, you don't have to be,
Right.
you just happen to be, and it was so much fun. Uh, but for anyone, if I can then help them understand, okay, we can talk in the way that makes sense for you.
Right.
We if you're a sacral authority, I can ask lots of yes or no questions. Splenic authority, similar. Like, what's your
Mhm.
first intuitive hit here? I have clients who are self-projected projectors, and they need to hear themselves speak. They need that auditory feedback loop in a safe, non-judgmental space.
Mhm.
And so that, like, it's really important. So when they're talking something out, they'll kind of stop and look at me. I'm like, I'm gonna let you keep talking.
Mhm.
Like, keep going. What else is in there? What else is in there? Because that's how they come to their decisions. If they're emotional authority, I'm going to help them see the highs and the lows. We're going to go through the up and the down together. And from my perspective, from someone who supports people, I cannot imagine not having this tool
Mhm.
anymore, right?
Mhm.
And just the innate, sense. The more that you get used to it, the more you understand how it works, how authorities work, how important, like, the impactful channels and gates and centers, right? Like, the important parts. You don't have to be like a full-on expert in the
Right.
whole thing in order to be able to apply the parts that are going to be super, super, super helpful for clients. And so I said all of that because now I want you to talk about, what does that mean for you? Like, how has that been for you to start to, like, honor yourself, honor your response mechanism, honor, your decision making process that's different from, what you've been practicing for most, the first few decades of life. And then how are you seeing that possibility of opening that up for other people to be able to do the same?
Yeah. For me personally, it really is diving full on. So it is diving full on in, and let me take a step back. So for somebody who has a 1-3 profile, that kind of makes sense. So for anybody who is unfamiliar, a 1-3 profile, we'll call it an investigator martyr. That's kind of the term that's used in human design. And when someone said martyr, I was like, oh my God, what the hell does that mean? What the but so hear me out. So for somebody who's a 1-3, it's somebody who by innate nature feels insecure, right? And I will absolutely say that for myself. I've always felt insecure when it comes to my knowledge, my skills. It's like I can't get enough. I have to keep learning, have to keep learning, have to keep learning. And that's kind of what has really benefited me when it comes to human design. Like that's part of my power. So for anybody out there, like, you utilize somebody who's a 1-3 because you know they're gonna eventually learn enough to be an authority. Well, the flip side of that is that the 3 side of the equation, the martyr, is all about trial and error. And that's where the idea of a martyr really comes from, is the idea of they're the ones out there getting knocked down, getting right back up and trying it again to really see what fits and what doesn't. And I've really taken that to heart. And, I had this aha moment because sometimes I was really struggling with, well, how in the literal hell am I supposed to build a foundation and experiment at the same time? It's like those two things were contradictory to one another until I got into the depths of human design. And it's like, I can't build a foundation if I'm not experimenting and putting myself out there and quote unquote paying the price of what works and what doesn't. And that's what I've really leaned into my own design, is I really am like patience. I think patience is a value, a lesson that literally every single human being on the planet needs to learn, but it certainly is a part of my own design, in really leaning into the waiting to respond. And in my design, I am very intuitive. I can really rely on my spleen to tell me yes or no if this whatever I'm engaging in is going to be safe for me, but I have a very logical mind. So I can look at something and say yes to something, and then my mind will go, oh, well, you can do this, 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 and this. And so that's what I used to do. I used to run after that and be like, And then I would do that thing. I hate Zoom at this point. I'd get a little thumbs up, but I would run after the thing, and you know this. I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to do that. That's not right, right? So I've had to learn to allow my body to lead versus my mind. And one of the practical tips that I've started doing is if I have an idea, I'll just write it down on a notebook. And if my body is not saying yes to something, then it's like, nope, I'm not doing it right now. It will either come to me as it's supposed to from the universe, or I'm not supposed to do it. Or one of the tenets of human design is that your mind is made for other people, right? You're gathering all of this data, you're processing all of this data, and really what goes through your mind is meant for other people. They call it outer authority. And so I really started leaning into that as well. And what I've also started doing too is, and you know this because you're great at this, is like, I need you to ask me yes or no questions. Right. And this kind of gets into kind of where we're leading, is like, you have to ask me yes or no questions so that I can tap into my energy, and my body will say, yes, that's for me, or no, it's not for me. And just to be really poignant with people of like, I just need you to ask. So when anybody asks me an open-ended question, I'm like, I can't. I'll either say I don't know, but before I knew about human design, anything you know about a generator, because they need yes or no questions to tap into their energy, if someone were to ask me an open-ended question, that's when my not self, my quote unquote nurture would come in, and I would like root around something inside of me or inside of my head and rationalize an answer to you. And so that becomes kind of a quote unquote damaging thing. And that was kind of the light bulb moment that I had when it was like, oh, wait a minute. This might be super helpful for people who are coaches and coaching clients in any respect, in any industry, in any field, to be able to tap into their energy in a way that's super personal to that person.
Yeah, because I think this is where the coaching industry is going in general. We are really, really moving away from anything that is cookie cutter, one size fits all, do this program and you're going to have results. People are just not buying it anymore because it it really doesn't work for everyone, right? Someone who's like, this worked great for me. Now we can see that from a human design lens and go, yeah, because this, and this inside of you makes that work. So anyone who is similar to you, sure, that's going to work for.
Mhm.
Anyone else, it is not going to work.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about, especially, especially coaches who are, again, like doing things that really personalizing their coaching for each client, this aspect of knowing yourself first, I think is always
Mhm.
so, so important, but then also then knowing your clients and how to support them. So I wanted to elaborate a little bit on the yes or no question piece too,
Yeah.
right? Because from like anyone who's gone through coaching training, right? Like always ask open-ended questions. Don't ask closed-ended questions. Like that's a no-no. And yet, because again, this is how I respond as well. I will do the same thing. Someone will ask me an open-ended question. I'll do one of two things. Either I'm
Mhm.
like nothing, or they'll be like, well, so tell me everything about you. And I'm like, well, when I was two, and I'm like, we're going way too far back. And so
Uh-huh.
like people would tell me like your stories are great, but you need to kind of like rein them in. I'm like, I, I don't know where to start when someone just
Yeah.
when someone just asks me an open question. I kind of like if you give me yes or no questions enough times, they will turn into a yes and.
Mhm.
They will or it will turn into a no and. And then I can elaborate very succinctly
Mhm.
on that. And that's an aspect of my design that, yeah, the open-ended questions that any like natural, or learned coaching behavior just really isn't super effective for me. So from your experience, I don't have a coaching certification. I have lots of other certifications.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, tell me like what is that like from being in that, certified coach role?
Yeah. So I had a like what's the word I'm looking for? Like not a come to Jesus moment, but this like, oh crap moment. Because when I went through my coaching certification, what I really enjoyed about it was, from my 1-3 profile, was one, I learned how to take myself out of the equation, which I think is part of one of the biggest like aha moments of coaching. It's like, it's not through your lens, or it's not through your, as much as you can, right? We're all human, we're all subjective, right? But taking the judgment from what somebody else is going through, and being able to put yourself at a very objective point of view. And it was hammering. It was, always open-ended questions, always open-ended questions. That's how you're really going to get to the root of every single, what someone's feeling, and da 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 da. And I took that to heart. My 1-3 is like dogma. It's like, okay, I'll do that. You tell me what to do, I'll do it. I don't want to be wrong. And it was like, you'll fail, quote unquote, your certification if you ask close-ended questions. So I was like, okay, only open-ended questions. And then, I had coaching clients, and I was doing my thing. I was always asking open-ended questions. And there was like times it was like, well, this person can't get to it. And one of the most annoying things as a coach is when I was doing is when someone said, well, I don't know. And I'd be like, how do you not know? And simply because, I'd be like, well, I can always find an answer to an open-ended question. Come on, let's, and being fully transparent, obviously the client wouldn't know that, but it was kind of like, it would be frustrating after the session to be like, God, how do I unlock this for this person? Like, how do I get to it? And being an intuitive person, I'm like, I can see it. How do I ask the question to get there? Right. And it wasn't until I got to human design, it was like, oh, okay. It didn't click with me yet to like combine the two things. It was kind of like, oh, okay. I kind of see it now. And then I was so focused on human design. It was like, yes, ask me yes or no questions, ask me yes or no questions. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, how much is being left on the table? Because any coach out there, right, is following what seems to be a very logical way of going about coaching, of asking open-ended questions. But then it was like, oh my God, if I had just asked an open-ended question during those times where I couldn't unlock something for someone, and 70% of the world are generators or manifesting generators, there's like, split half and half between those two things. Like, hello, like most of the people need close-ended questions. They need yes or no questions to tap into their energy. And then it was like, as I got deeper into human design, and it was like, you ask a generator an open-ended question, they're going to go straight to their mind, and they're not going to be able to access their energy. And I was like, what? There it is. And that's when it was like, this was a space where it was like, okay, I'm done compromising with this model that I've been given, this collective model. For anybody who's really into human science, collective model, so I'll be honest about that. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to, use my intuition and tap into this person. And if the only type of question I ask is a close-ended question, well, then that's the only kind of question that I ask, so long as that person can tap into their body and not their mind.
Yeah, I can't stress enough just how impactful that shift is. And again, knowing your client and knowing i- there are times it's interesting because the deeper you get into it and the more you practice this as well, you can start to notice what energy is around you, even if you don't know, if you can't, you're not going to know everyone's birth information, and that's fine. But, there are some like tells, there are some ways, if people straight up tell you, I never make a decision in a day. I always have to sleep on it. They're probably emotional authority. And they have learned, right, that if they make a decision like right away, it usually goes badly. Which is perfect, right? I love to see, like, actually, especially people who, I want to say, like, a lot of the charts that I have pulled, over the last several years are people who are more in their at least late 30s, if not like 40s and 50s. And they've started to live their design without even knowing it. Like when you start to like talk through some of it, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that is how that works for me. I know that that's how that works for me, but I didn't know that it was like, that's me and that's not my spouse or my partner, for instance, right? Like that's where the interesting pieces come up. Um, but I mean, if we have like a projector, for example, who has splenic authority or self-projected authority or mental authority, or if you have a reflector who has a moon, like a lunar authority, right? It's understanding the nuances between people and meeting them. You get to meet someone where they're at, and they will feel so much more
Mhm.
seen, heard, understood. Like it's so it can be such a tender thing,
Yeah.
right? Like how did you feel?
The light bulb moment was the majority of people on this planet are generators. So the majority of people will respond to yes or no questions. But then the other big chunk of people are projectors. They do appreciate open-ended questions, right? Projectors are meant to be guides of other people's energy. Actually, projectors should be coaches, but it's a whole another topic for a whole another day. But they can respond to open-ended questions. You get a manifester, one, maybe not a lot of manifestors seek coaching, but there's a specific reason for that. But from a manifestor's perspective, as a coach, from the coach's seat, is like setting the expectation of what to expect, what the process is going to look like, give them the framework and kind of let them run the show. I actually was texting with a manifestor friend of mine, and I was like, hey, if you were to ever enter into coaching, what would you want that to look like? That's exactly what she said. She's like, you kind of got to let me run the show. And that's not to say that every manifestor is going to be that way. But if you sense that someone's kind of a bull in a china shop, there may be a good chance they're a manifestor or they're trying to be a manifestor. But to your point is, a reflector. For anybody who's a reflector from the coach's seat, it's being able to allow them that 28 to 29-day cycle to get through something, to be able to, your job as a coach for a reflector is really to sit there and give them space, because the environment is the most important thing for them. And almost like a self-projected person, they need space to talk in order to really hear it and feel it. And, it's understanding these nuances that will take a coaching relationship to the next level. But on top of that, it's also looking at their authority, right? For somebody who has a splenic authority, you're in a session, they could be like, yep, or nope. Somebody who has emotional authority, as a coach, you may have to set the stage to allow them to go through their wave. They may not have an answer for you until the next time that you speak to them. Same with a self projected projector, is they've got to hear themselves. And again, they may not come to a conclusion as they're sitting in that coaching space with you, but you've given them something that probably the majority of other people don't or can't or don't know, to be honest, is that they need space to hear themselves speak, to get that little hit of, oh yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. And it's truly amazing to be able to open up a space even more personalized for someone based on maybe 4 to 5 pieces of data from their human design. You don't need to know the whole ins and outs and all the stuff that I know. Come to me, I'll give you those 4 to 5 different pieces of data that you need to know, and I can support you through, learning enough to support your client in that way. But those 4 pieces of data, they'll change your life and they change the life of your client.
So that's yes, I wanted you to be able to talk about that a little bit. How like how excited are you
Oh my gosh.
to like work in this way, and what does that look like? What does that look like? Because again, I am so excited about this. I even if anyone follows me on social media, as soon as Lauren was like, "This is what I'm doing," I'm like, "Oh my gosh, everyone needs to know about this."
Yes.
So I posted about it right away. And the because I've seen such amazing results and find it to be so, so valuable in my work with clients. Um, but not everyone has the desire or the time to dive into human design as deeply as you and I have, right?
Mhm.
Or other people who are like, oh, I have to go down this rabbit hole, right? Some people are like, I want to know enough, and that's what they need, right? Like you said,
Mhm.
like those 4 main points, right? And that's enough to make a big shift and a big difference in your life. So tell me more about like if someone's saying, oh my gosh, I would love to do that. I would love to do this with and for my clients and be able to support them in this way. How are you doing that?
Yes. And and to take a step back too, part of what we talked about before this is, as a professional coach, you get into this whole business of, I wanna have long relationships with my clients. I want to be able to foster this, ongoing relationship. And as you know, from my personal journey, it was kind of like, yeah, I can't do that. That's not like, when I say that my spleen is so on fire, it means that like a moment is a moment is a moment and nothing else matters. And after that moment is over, I can't concentrate. I don't focus. I'm on to something else. Right. And so part of my journey, and this is where this comes from, is to be able to have those quick hits with people, is to give them the information and be on my merry way. That's not to say that I'm like gone and you can never see me again. It's a matter of, hey, I'm giving you what you've asked for and you need in this moment, and I'm here. I am in this moment with you. After the moment's over, see ya, love you, bye, I'll see ya. And that's where part of this came from is, because having responded to human design, and my 1-3 was like, yes, I'm diving all in the moment this happens, is to be able to give coaches that quick hit, is a client's type, a client's strategy, which they kind of go hand in hand, right? If you're a manifestor, you inform. If you're a generator, you respond. If you're a projector, you wait for the invitation. If you're a reflector, you wait out your mid-cycle. Your authority, like how is it that your clients are designed to make decisions? Because that is super powerful. Also their definition, and we don't necessarily really have to get into that. It's what is their nature? But on the flip side of that, what is their nurture or not self in human design? And where in their lives do they tend to get tripped up? And that is like one of the biggest aha moments as a coach, that like, if you were to be armed with that, to be able to effectively challenge a client on kind of the challenges that they bring to you, it would open a world of aha moments. And I'll give you a specific example. So Hannah knows this about me. So when it comes to without getting into too many details, when it comes to your not self, it can be your undefined centers. And for anybody who has seen a chart, it's your white or blank centers, right? So my not self, I have a completely open heart center, completely open ego, which means like I got nothing pointed at it, nothing. It is completely whatever. I have an undefined emotional center. I have an undefined head and an undefined G center, which means my love, identity, and direction, right? And from a not self standpoint, up until I learned human design, all of those open centers will override my natural authority, which is my gut response. They're going to be louder in my head than anything else that is my true nature. So from Hannah's standpoint, what was really effective is when she asks me questions, are you making this decision from your ego? Are you trying to prove something, right? And as a coach, to be able to safely challenge a client from that space of, I love you, I see you, I hear you, and I'm going to pinpoint, hey, is that getting at some of the challenges that you've always experienced in your life? Because that was one of the biggest trip ups in my life, is like, I would make a decision because I was going to try to prove to somebody else I could do it. And then I would overcommit myself and then be like, yeah, I don't want to do any of that. And then I'd look like an absolute ass because I never followed through on my word. When in the beginning, I never wanted to do any of it anyway, but I was making decision from my ego center. It was like, yeah, I can prove to you I can do this. Yeah, I got the willpower. I sure don't. I sure don't do that. And then the fourth piece of information that is really powerful for a coach is a client's profile, which is probably one of the most complex parts of human design. But, from my point of view, I would give you the highlights to say, hey, here's what you can kind of see. Here's how, when you take all of these pieces together, it's like the profile kind of wraps around all of that together and allows you to see how that person is going to operate and kind of process what they go through, even if they know it or they don't know it.
Yeah, oh my gosh. First of all, it feels like, just for my heart, I like, it feels so full. Like knowing that is powerful and helpful. Um, to, to know that, because yeah, like you were saying, the undefined ego center or heart center, when it's undefined or completely open for you, you have nothing to prove ever,
Nothing.
nothing to anyone. So anyone with an undefined will center, you do not have anything to prove. That is not what you are here for. I have a defined will center. I have a little bit to prove here and there. Right. Or like that's part of my design. To have the willpower to like, I'm gonna commit to this and see it through.
Mhm.
Um, and so what does that mean? Right? Like what does that actually mean? It means we're designed to work differently with people. And that like being able to honor that is what helps us come into what you're saying, like your true self, your nature. And the more we can align with our own nature, the more life flows easily, right? And we stop pushing against things so much. And I don't know what else the coaching industry is even for if it's not to help people align with themselves more fully.
Mhm. And there's another kind of part of that equation too. So if you're a coach out there and you have live sessions with your clients, you're physically in the same space with your clients. Another helpful piece of the puzzle is to know your own design and to be able to understand how you may naturally influence your client in the same space or vice versa, how your client may naturally we'll say influence. So for instance, if Hannah and I were in the same space, this is a perfect example. The same space, like because of my open heart center and because of her defined heart center, I would be quote unquote conditioned in her presence. Mine would become defined because it's open. And so if she and I were having a conversation, she was coaching me and she would be like, do you want to do that right now? Or do you think you can commit to that right now? In her presence, I might say, yes, absolutely. The moment we're outside of each other's aura, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that. Right. Because I was able to tap into her willpower and I would make a decision that likely wasn't my own to make or not something that I could make or maybe something I can't follow through with. So that's where it becomes super important. And that's not to say that she and I can't sit in a room and make decisions because actually Hannah and I have very, we'll just call it compatible designs, for lack of a better term. And so that doesn't mean we can't work together. It's that because we know this about one another, we can take a step back after we're outside of each other and say, I can't a great example for me would be, I'll try my best, as opposed to, yes, I will absolutely do that, right? It's being able to understand how each influence or how each design may influence one another so that you as a coach, you have even more information in your back pocket that says, oh, maybe we need to dig into this if we make something, if a commitment is made and it's not followed through. But just one example of literally billions out there. But that's where my education and expertise comes into play. You don't have to learn all this stuff. I can give you the information and support you through the process.
Hmm. Yeah. So that was such a good nuance, and I think a really, really good place um to leave that like it's not just about your own energy or their own energy, but your energy together
Mhm.
and understanding, right? Yeah, how you might be influencing um unconsciously until you realize it.
Yeah, we don't have any control over it. It just
Right.
happens.
Yeah. I mean, this just is like
Right.
we just connect in a lot of really cool ways, and knowing that knowing that like we can shift each other. It's like how do you utilize those connections or even overlaps, right? Sometimes just depending on how your two charts go together,
Mhm.
how do we utilize that for empowerment and for helping people make the best decisions versus seeing it as any sort of I feel like anything that comes with a disempowering feeling or thought needs to be challenged.
Mhm.
Right? Anytime in human design, I've seen some of that recently, like people thinking, hearing things or being told things from other people that felt very disempowering or felt very, um, left them feeling sad or upset about something about them. That's not the purpose
No.
of the system whatsoever. It's like, if that's how you've felt or if you've ever experienced that, um, I think, Lauren, I think you are such a perfect person to actually help people through that and to see that difference of like, here are, again, here's what's really magical and awesome. Here are some things that they might have had challenges with in the past and how you can support them better than they've ever been supported. And that is like magical.
Yeah, and that's the greatest thing about human design is that it's amoral, right? Nothing about it is good or bad. I mean, there may be parts of your nature that can be more challenging to wrap your head around than others. Like for me, I had a really hard time really wrapping my brain around my brain and my mind and like what you said is for me or isn't for me or, but it's being able to truly live it. And that's what I'm here for, is to say that you're not broken. Nobody's broken. No one needs fixing. Actually, what we need is to like unravel some of the things that we've become or that we've forced ourselves into because we thought it's what we were supposed to be. And that's the magic of human design, is that it creates permission to live as you and only you, right? Because you and I we have somewhat similar designs. We have very different designs at the same time. And it's being able to embrace that and the level of freedom that you can experience when you take the highs with the lows, or the, perceived good with the bad, or, the black with the white, whatever the case may be. And that's the greatest thing about human design, is that you are who you are and you're beautiful in every way that you come together, whether you're standing in your own aura, you're connecting with others, and, you know, together we're, everything in human design. But when we separate ourselves, we're exactly who we're supposed to be. And that's the beauty part of it. That's the beautiful part of it.
Mm. So, Lauren, if anyone is interested in everything you've been saying and wants to, learn more, how can they find you? Where do you hang out? All of those things. Tell people how they can get hold of you.
Yeah, so I hang out mostly on social media on LinkedIn. So you can find me under Lauren Ammon. Pretty cut dry. If you see Cincinnati, Ohio, that's me. And then for any coaches out there, to check out performancereimagined.com. Is it /? I never know the technical term. Coaches. There you'll find more information in terms of, what it looks like to integrate human design into your coaching practice. We even have an introduction to human design for coaches free download if you're interested in receiving that, and it'll give you kind of the intro into all of that. And if you're interested, hop on the website and you can hop on a call if you're ready to dive right in, and we can figure out if this is something that really is for you.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you so much, Lauren, for being here and talking about this with me today. I have loved this conversation as much as any conversation that we have. And I'm just so excited. I'm so excited to see more, more humans be supported in the
Yes,
way that they are meant to be supported. So
yes.
I love that.
Thank you for having
And
me, friend. I appreciate it.
of course, of course. And if anyone has any questions for Lauren or for me, and you would like to hear more, or if you want to hear more from Lauren specifically and have her on again, send your questions over to Lauren or to me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com. We absolutely love to answer your questions. I love having people on multiple times so we can dive deeper into topics. And if you really enjoyed this information, I would love if you would like and subscribe. Subscribe and leave a review on any of the podcast platforms is super, super helpful so more people can hear this information. So until next time, we'll see you again. Thanks, everyone. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, HANNAH, at expansiveceo.com, and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough, you are enough, and your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.